Hey class, I am coming to you from our classroom today to give you a little bit of a reminder on some of the content that we spoke about in this last. I'm hoping that this is working right. I can't see myself in this, but let's make sure. There we go. Okay. I think that's working correctly. Anyways, I am writing you this information to go over some of the final exam details for each of you and review some of the content that will be on the final exam. So if you see here under Unit 8 on our exam for Review 3, this is the information I'm going to be going over today. As a reminder, I went ahead and I set up the questions for Exam 3 over here, and I've added a discussion item, so feel free to add any questions that you have there. Like I said, simply email me to let me know that you've posted something in there, and I'll go in immediately and respond to you and make sure that as a class you're checking back periodically if you do have any questions that you can see on here that those questions have been answered or they haven't. So let's go back and review really quickly. This exam is going to be covering Perelman, Burke, Bitzer, and Foucault, and you'll have the entire class period to finish that exam. Because the final exam is 3 hours, you'll have from 8 in the morning till 11 in the morning to complete the exam. However, my same guidelines and rules and requirements still stand that if you come 5 minutes after, or I'd like you to come at no later than 5 minutes after in order to complete the exam and be allowed to take it. So like I said, also, if you want to get your grade, you can wait for me and I will grade your exam on the spot. It may take a little bit of time if we're backed up and other people have finished before you, but you're more than welcome to sit around and wait for me to grade the paper. If you would like it instead mailed back to you with the comments and the grades, go ahead and bring a self-addressed stamped envelope that will hold a blue book, and I can mail that information back to you as well. Or you can just wait till I post the grades in the college portal, and those should all be uploaded, I believe, the last day of finals, which is around like the 16th or so. So here are the concepts that I want you to be familiar with when you're taking your exam. So know, like it says, not only how to define, but also describe and apply the concepts. And the most important thing is that you understand like how each of these things is important to rhetoric, whether it be from the position of the writer, the rhetorician, or whether it be from the position of the audience, how to view and how to utilize these theories when applying, analyzing, or examining any piece of rhetorical discourse. So the first thing that we're going to need to know is Perelman's universal audience. I would encourage you to know the definition of a universal audience, and then what I would like you to do is tell me why we use the universal audience when writing rhetorical discourse. So make note of that. But as a reminder, the universal audience is essentially all of humanity. It is the reason that we have a universal audience is that we know how to appeal to the most amount of individuals. We can get the most amount of people to adhere to us when writing to a universal audience. And the other idea that the universal audience provides us with is an opportunity to maintain ethical responsibility through the process of checks and balances or checking of our work. And so through that process, we can, again, not only gain the most amount of people possible, but also remain ethically responsible. So the particular audience is the specific audience that we are speaking to, typically those people who are right in front of us, if we're looking at it in a speech event. If we're looking at it in some type of advertising, it's individuals who will, let's say it's advertising in a magazine, it's the demographic of whom is going to buy that magazine. Those are our particular audience. If it's people watching television during the day, that is our particular audience, and we know the specific demographics about them. The audience of one is traditionally our opposition, or the people who are on the fence, depending on what type of speech or persuasive speech you're trying to give or persuasive discourse. But when addressing the audience of one, it allows us the opportunity to address the concerns as to why they are against us, or address the concerns as to why they're on the fence for us. When we can present them with that information in advance, it doesn't allow them an opportunity to poke a hole in our argument or question our beliefs or backgrounds, why we're doing something, and it allows for us, again, to gain the most adherence of individuals. And the last thing is the audience of self. This is where you, as the individual rhetor, need to be questioning yourself each time that you write something, when you present a statistic, when you present a visual aid, when you write an advertising campaign. Is what I'm saying ethical and responsible? Am I being honest in what I am saying? Can I follow through on the promises that I've made? If you answer no to those questions, then you need to go back in and rework and restructure the entire speech, or those parts that are faulty. Once we have addressed the audience of one, the self, and the particular, you are ready to take your material to the universal audience and you're ready to present it. Then we look at Burke's pentad. So what is the purpose of the pentad in general? I will ask you to know that. And why would Burke want us as rhetoricians or as audience members to look at the pentad? The pentad has 5 parts: the act, which is what is being done; the scene, which is the place where the rhetoric is taking place; the purpose, why the speech is being given; the agent, the person doing the act or giving the discourse; and finally the agency, the medium, the vehicle, the powers that allow for that agent to complete the discourse or to deliver the speech or to deliver the advertisement or the commercial. Understanding those points, you will be asked to define each of them and then identify them within the artifact that's given. And making sense of that, let me go back to that really quick, is that down here, if you'll see, for the final, you will be reading a speech about the assassination of Martin Luther King Jr. using Perlman's audience and Bitzer's rhetorical situation and Burke's pentad. So I would encourage you now to look at the video and also look at the text. On speech day, I'll be giving you the text, but it's important to note that you can study this and learn this in advance, like what is the pentad, who, what, where, when, why, what's the purpose, etc. And you can look into the particular and the audience of one and the audience of self. You can pretty much do all of that in advance if you understand the concept and the idea. The other thing is Burke's terministic screens. So what are terministic screens by definition? And you are going to be required to look at some of the terministic screens in that speech as well as the idea of what is identification and how does Robert Kennedy use that. Then you'll need to go into Bitzer's rhetorical situation. So what is the rhetorical situation in general? And then how do we create a fitting response based upon the 3 elements of the situation? So the exigence, what's an exigence, and be able to identify it. Who is an audience, and be able to identify it. And then finally, I am going to be looking for constraints. Constraints in general, and then I want you to tell me what internal constraints are, and you're going to be required to give a couple examples of those. And then external constraints, and you'll be required to give a couple examples of those. So make sure that you're aware of that. For Foucault's knowledge power discourse, this I'm going to be asking you, what is the connection between knowledge, power, and discourse? How are all those things interconnected? What would Foucault say about it? Try to give us some type of definition and description. And then the last thing that you're going to do is you are going to be describing panopticism. So you'll define that in general. Then I'm going to give you an artifact of which you are going to explain panopticism's existence within. And then you'll tell us how that panopticism is working within the picture and then on the bigger grand scale within our society. So those are the reviews and the things that you will need to know. It is pretty straightforward, and if you prepare through that speech in advance, I guarantee you will be good to go. So feel free to put any questions that you may have in our discussion board, and otherwise I will see you Thursday the 9th from 8 to 11 in our classroom. Bye.